Hi guys, Mike and Jonathan here with Yoga for Men, and today we're going to talk about getting into your hips a little bit with some half pigeon work and some different modifications and variations that you might want to include in your practice. So traditionally we enter half pigeon from downward facing dog. So if you will, Jonathan, you can start to find downward dog. Okay, and then from downward facing dog, we're going to use the left side to demonstrate today. So on your inhale, we'll take the left leg high. On the exhale, you take the left knee to the outside of the left wrist, release the shin and the top of the foot, and then notice how he uses this back foot to draw that foot back, uses the toes to draw the foot back. That drops the hips down. And now, once the hips are nice and level, they're as deep as he's going to get right here, you can go ahead and walk your hands forward. You want to walk it all the way out of the waist, so that spine is nice and long, and then you can lower your forehead down. And you want to release all of the tension that you have in that upper body. So just releasing the forehead down, releasing any tension in the upper body. If your forehead doesn't rest comfortably on the floor, you can always use a block or a blanket to rest the forehead. Now, if you notice here, Jonathan's got relatively open hips, so he's pretty close to the floor. However, there is, a little bit of space here where you're going to hover, or potentially could hover, and this is totally acceptable. However, it also might get, pretty intense if you're sitting here hovering with the tension that you have here on the piriformis. So, potentially if you're here and you're hovering and it gets to be too much, a little discomfort's okay, but if you're starting to move into pain, I absolutely suggest you go ahead and use a prop, use a little bit of support. So you might use a blanket, and if you're up even higher, and I'll let you go ahead and situate that, you can use a blanket for support. See, Jonathan's close enough to the floor that the blanket provides perfect support for him to keep the hips level and to keep from sinking off into either side. If you're a little bit higher, use a block and a blanket, if that's the case. Now, if you want to add a little bit more to this posture and even potentially get into, the quad and possibly the hip flexor in this back leg, what you can do is you can point the toe, and then when you're ready, you can just walk your hands up a little bit. And then from this position, reaching back and grabbing the foot with the right hand. And for some of us guys, that might not be available, but you still want to get into the quad. And if that's the case, go ahead and use a strap, right? And you can bring, I got you right there, there you go. So using that strap to give yourself that distance and that space to the foot where you can access the quad. Okay, and then from here, maybe for some of us, this variation in the posture is just not even going to be remotely available, okay? So for some of us, when you bring that knee forward, and we'll just show them what it might look if you had really tight hips here, Jonathan. Yes, this is it right here. So as you come forward, and we're super tall, and that left foot won't even come forward even a little bit, right? And it just feels like you're in a low lunge where you just drop the knee, then I would suggest that we go ahead and take a different variation on the posture and completely just go ahead and flip over on your back, guys. And if you're ever in a class where the instructor cues half pigeon, and this is your variation of half pigeon, you don't need permission to go ahead and just flip over on your back and find it. It's your practice, so go ahead and do this even if you're in your class. Okay, and what you're going to do here is with your feet the way that they would be in bridge, you're just going to take that left foot up and over the right knee and the right thigh. You want to make sure that you're flexing the foot here, so you're drawing the toes back. That's going to help protect your knee here. And then for some of us, this might be just enough. Okay, just taking that hand on the inside of the thigh, on the inside of the knee, applying a little bit of pressure here, staying with that Ujjayi breath. Okay, and this is the start of your hip opener. Totally acceptable and totally understandable for those of us with tight hips. Okay, now, for some of us, there might be a little bit deeper variation available to us while we're lying on our back, and that could be just threading through. So you'll take your left hand, thread it through that triangle. The right hand comes to the outside. Notice he interlaces the fingers around the knee, and with that foot flexed, as he's drawing that knee back, that starts to get into the outside of the hip. Okay, and for some of us, this isn't going to be available, reaching all the way to the shin and the knee, so you might have to just grab behind the knee, right, where the hamstring and the back of the thigh, and start to draw back here. Okay? So, go ahead and release it down, Jonathan. Guys, thank you so much. Lots of different variations to work with on half pigeon, lots of different ways to get into that hip, and even the quad, potentially the hip flexor. Regardless, always keep it a practice. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Namaste.